Hi folks, it's Rob from the Brush and Vulcan. Tonight we're going to be painting up Yolanda Scorn, a bounty hunter from Necromunda Underhive. She's one of the Forge World minis, so really good quality, really good casting. So let's get on with that. Now the first colour we're going to use this time is going to be Citadel Leadbelcher. So we're going to be doing all of the base with this, and some of the details like the grenades and the blade, a few of the smaller details on the miniature itself. I was really impressed with this. It's one of the Forge World hired guns pack that you can get. It's 3 great figures and the casting is really good on every one of them. So we'll be painting up all 3 of those over the coming weeks. We'll finish that off. Next up it's going to be Vallejo Flesh Base. It's just going to be to do the small areas of skin on the miniature. And there's some really thin areas between some of the straps on her arms. And some little tiny sections like her ears and down the side of her neck. But I mean, if you're carrying on painting, if you find any bits that you've missed, you can just go back and do them. I think the trickiest bits are between these little straps on her arms. You have to do sort of like sideways stroke. And you can always paint up the straps afterwards and get rid of any of the skin colour that you might have got on them. Like so. Next we're going to be using Citadel Averland Sunset. There's a nice yellow base colour. I'm going to be doing the armour on her torso and the loincloth. So you want to make sure you get a nice smooth coat of this. I really enjoyed painting this miniature, so you're likely to see a fair few more of the Forge World Necromunda miniatures being painted over the next few weeks and months. Coming to the end of the Black Legion ones now. There's not too many different ones to paint of those. So I'll be mainly concentrating on Necromunda. Probably a few different bits and pieces as the months go by. Next up we're going to be using a little bit of Citadel Mephiston Red, which is the nice red base colour. It's mainly just to do the trousers she's wearing underneath her high boots. So if you put one layer on and it's a little tiny bit streaky, just go back and give it another layer. You'll find in time getting rid of the streaks does help when you're building up the layers later on. Keeps all the colours more consistent. Now we're going to be using a little bit of Vallejo Model Air Chrome. It's going to be to do the trims of the shoulder pads and some of the bits on, not sure if it's a bionic hand or a bit of a metal gauntlet. We're also going to be using this later on the studs of her glove on her left hand, so you can paint these studs with the silver now. I don't actually paint them to the very end, so if you paint them now, it gets that job out the way. Moving on, we're going to be using a little bit of Vallejo White, and this is just going to be to paint her hair. Now, same as the red and the yellow, if you put this on it's a little bit streaky. You just want to give that another layer, get that nice and smooth. If it's still streaky, give it another layer. So you are doing very thin layers on it. You don't want to splodge the paint on. Get too much in there because you don't want to ruin detail on the hair. Like so. Now we're going to be using Citadel Rakarth Flesh Base, and that is going to be to do the cloth that she's wearing over her face, and also the one that is on top of her head as well. The bits going up the side of her head, it's almost like a bit of a cloth beard. So you want to make sure you get the undersides and the side edges of that as well. Now we're going to be moving on to a little bit of Vallejo Burnt Umber. I'm going to use this to do all her pouches, and also the inside of the shoulder pads. I originally painted them up with Leadbelcher, but look, I was going to use loads of shades to tone down the shoulder pads to get them that browny black colour that they are in the official miniature, but thought it's probably just as easy to use Vallejo Burnt Umber and just shade that instead. Now we're going to be using a tiny little bit of Ahriman blue. It's a really quick layer because we're only going to use it on the lenses from her goggles. Like so. Here's actually where we're using the burnt umber on the shoulder pads. Just getting a really quick going over. Make sure you get a smooth coat over the metallic. Sometimes metallics can dry really smooth, and then when you paint over them it streaks very easily. You'll also be able to use any kind of dark brown for this. It doesn't have to be the Vallejo Burnt Umber. That's just the paint I had to hand. So that's the shoulder pads finished. Now we're moving on to Citadel Retributor Armour, and that's just to do a few little details, like part of her dagger, also the two little clasps on the side of her bag. Like so. Now I'm going to use Vallejo Black. I'm just going to do some of the stripes on the base and reapply black to any of the areas on her boots or the rest of the miniature, like the belt and stuff, where there may be other layers of paint on. Now you can see to draw these stripes on here, I've used pencil first to draw the pencil lines of where the stripes are going to go. Then I'm just following those lines as straight as possible and filling in the gap in the middle. You just want to make sure you do the edges of the black lines as well when they dip down towards the metallic. Make sure you do them before you carry on. Now we're moving on to shades, and we're going to start with Citadel Seraphim Sepia. We're going to use this on the cloth on her face and on her loincloth as well. Now usually I'd use Fugan Orange on the loincloth, but because it's the Underhive it's not as bright. You want it to look a little bit more grimy, so a bit of Seraphim Sepia on that, and also on her chest armour as well. It does make it look a lot more grimy, less bright and vivid. Like so. Next up we're going to be using a little bit of Druchii Violet. This is just to do the red tube and the red on her trousers and knee pad. Now we're going on to Citadel Guilliman Blue Glaze. Now this is just to do her hair. If you do quite a thick glaze on her hair, it sort of stains the white while leaving the darker colour in the recesses. If you use Drakenhof Nightshade, it may be a bit too dark. We're also going to use a little bit of Carroburg Crimson Shade just to do the other half of her hair, where we put some Mephiston Red. Now the Mephiston Red covered the big area. We're just using the Carroburg Crimson to do the very top of that. Next up, Citadel Reichland Flesh Shade, and we're just going to do all of her skin with this. Next, Citadel Nuln Oil. This is going to be to do all the metallics. So this is all of her base, the metallic bits on her shoes, the blade, shoulder pads, backpack, grenades, you name it. Any silvery metallics on there, you want to get the Nuln Oil on. Next up, we're going to use Citadel Agrax Earthshade. That's going to be to add a bit of dirt and grime to the base, also to the blade, but mainly to paint up the satchel and the gun holster and the shoulder pads, to darken up those brown areas a bit. When you're adding it to the blade itself, you want to make sure that you're only adding it to maybe about a quarter of the blade near the handle, just so it's got that grimy look towards the hilt. Like so. Now we're going to start working on the skin again, so we're going to go back to Vallejo Flesh Base. We're going to be using a Citadel medium layer brush to do most of the skin areas. And when we're working on the face, we're going to be using an Armour Painter Wargamer character brush, just because there's lots of little details on there that we want to try and capture. So as you're reapplying the skin, you want to be leaving some of the shade in the recesses, so you get that darkening around the edges where the skin is creased around where the muscles and joints are. Now we're going to add a little bit of Vallejo White to Flesh Base. We're going to start applying a highlight to the colours. Like so. Now adding a little bit more white to the previous mix and giving that one final highlight. Like so. Next up we're going to use some Vallejo White just on its own, and this is going to be to do the eyeballs. So as always, you want to drag the brush away from the point so that you get a nice thin line of paint. So if that means turning the miniature on one side, then do that. If you do happen to get any white or black on the skin around the eyes when you're painting these, just use a little bit of the basic skin colour and recolour that in. I'm going to use a little bit of Vallejo Black just so that we can get the pupils in there. That left hand eye is looking a little bit startled, so we're going to add a little bit more black to that and just make it a little bit bigger. Now we're going to use a little bit of the flesh colour again, just touch up the eyelid. Now we're using Citadel Druchii Violet, and we're just going to put a little bit of purple shade on her eyelids, so there's a little bit of makeup on there. Also adds a little bit of character and a little bit of colour to the face. Like so. Next colour is going to be Citadel Ahriman Blue. I'm going to use a little bit of white mixed with that and do the first highlight on the lenses. So you want to be doing about half of the lens in a crescent. The bottom left hand side we're going to do here in this lighter shade. Just going to get a little bit more Ahriman blue and sort out that right hand lens there. Now we're going to add a little bit of white to the Ahriman blue. I'm just going to paint half of the previous crescent with this new lighter shade. Like so. Now I'm going to use a little bit of pure white. I'm just going to do little dots on the top right hand corner of each lens. And I'm going to do a slight little white line on the bottom left hand edge of each lens as well. Like so. Now we're moving on to Averland Sunset again. I'm going to reapply some yellow to the chest armour and also the loincloth. We are going to be leaving a fair bit of the sepia in the recesses here. It adds that grimy kind of colour to it, so you're not reapplying too much of the Averland Sunset, just on the exposed areas. And on the areas that are catching the most light, like the tops of the back piece, maybe a little bit down the bottom here. Next we're going to add a little bit of white to the Averland Sunset. We're just going to do a little bit of light highlighting on the armour. Like so. Now I'm going to use a little bit of Vallejo White and start working on the hair. Now on this you want to be just gently applying it. You'll probably have to do quite a few layers of this. And it's basically just applying the white so it goes down the hair, down to where it's blue and red. Which gives the impression that the red and the blue fades into the white. Like so. The Rakarth flesh, we're now going to apply the colour back onto the face mask, or the big cloth beard, and also the bit of material on the head there as well. Now with the hair that we've just previously done, you just want to keep applying the white until you're happy with how it looks. And once you're happy with it, move on to this Rakarth flesh. Now the Rakarth flesh, you want to be colouring in the cloth on all the areas where it'd be catching light, so you're leaving shade in all the recesses and around the little vents in her mask. Just going to add a little bit of white to the Rakarth flesh, and we're going to highlight that cloth. Next up is Burnt Umber. I'm going to reapply some of the colour to the pouches and the holster and the shoulder pads. Now they are going to be dirty and grimy, so you want to leave a fair old bit of the shading in the recesses on these. Just applying the colour back to the larger areas. I'll come back when these are done. Now we're just adding a little bit of Citadel Rakarth flesh to the burnt umber, and this is to give the impression that some of the leather has worn away and leaving that kind of furry leather underside. You get on bags and jackets and that where the leather's worn and a little bit scuffed and chafed. Like so. Next up we're going to be using Mephiston Red and start working on the pants again. You mainly want to be doing the areas where it's going to be catching the light. Now with these Forge World miniatures, they are really detailed, so you can see on the leg there's a slightly shaded area going from the top of the high boot to about halfway up the red there. That's one of the sort of like a crease in the muscle that you can see through the trousers. So they do all kinds of details like that on them. So you can, with a bit of careful shading and highlighting, make them look really, really good. Now we've added a little bit of Citadel Fire Dragon Bright to the Mephiston Red. I'm just going to be starting by highlighting the little points around that cut in the material. Now we're going to highlight the red. Again, you're highlighting the areas that will be catching the light more. Like so. Now we're going to add a little bit more Citadel Fire Dragon Bright to the previous mix and do another light highlight on the red. Like so. I'm just going to use a little bit of Vallejo Burnt Umber to do some nicks and chafes on the armour. Just going to be doing this on the torso armour and also on the yellow parts of the base as well. Like so. Now we're going to use a little bit of Vallejo German Grey. We're going to start highlighting the black of the high boots and also her gloves. There's plenty of details here when you paint them, so you just want to be making sure the sections that catch the light will be getting the highlights. So the underside of any cuts or chafes on the leather. Any bits that stick out enough to catch light. Now I'm going to use a little bit of Citadel Mechanicus Standard Grey. That is going to be to highlight the areas we've just done with the German Grey. So you can have far less highlights on this bit, but it's mainly going to be edges and little ridges and details that you're going to be putting this on. Like so. We're going to be going on to the loincloth now. So we're going to be using Citadel Averland Sunset to reapply the colour. Now you want to be leaving the Seraphim Sepia in the recesses there, so it gives it that dirty and grimy look. Like so. Now we're going to be using a little bit of Vallejo White, adding that to the Averland Sunset just to get a nice highlight colour for it. Like you've done with the other parts, this is going to be for any area that I think is going to be catching the light more than the rest. Now we're going to be using a little bit of Vallejo Black, and this is going to be to add some tiger stripes to the loincloth. So when you do these, you want to be setting them almost staggered, so you're going to be doing one on one side of the cloth, then another a little bit higher up on the opposite side, then back to the original side a little bit higher up again, so that they're kind of going up a little bit each time. When we come back, we'll have all these stripes finished, thankfully. Now we're just going to be using a little bit of Citadel Dry Necron Compound. That's just to add a few little edges to the metallics and to the base. A little metallic glove or bionic hand, whichever it is. It's very handy to do the edges with this, and it does give them a really good shine. So I used to use Vallejo Chrome to do this with, but the Necron Dry Compound is really, really good for it. Built specifically for that purpose. Now here we have the completed Yolanda Scorn. Now you can see on her left hand there, I've used a little bit of Vallejo Chrome just to paint all the little studs on her glove. So this is what I was talking about earlier on in the video. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel below so you don't miss any future content. Also, think about subscribing to some of our other social media linked below. Thanks very much.